2022 will be the year that we literally drown you in content. 156 standard 30-minute episodes of Deep Fat Fried, 52 long-form episodes of Deep Fat Fried, 37 episodes of Dank D&D, live episodes of Onion Nuggets every Wednesday, new Cinema for Cynics reviews, Fighting Boys, Abandon Hope, Hideology, Ask Hollywood Love, and The Grease Trap. And even if you manage to watch it all, we still have a massive back catalog of old content that's going to blow your mind. We have got metric tons of old commentaries, grease traps, mountains of Deep Fat Fried episodes. We've got oceans of flash fries. We got valleys of Abandon Hope and Hideology and other miscellaneous content you could watch for weeks, if not months, straight. And with all this content, both new and old, we have realized that it is time to simplify our Patreon. Yes! Right now, our Patreon is split into a $10 tier and a $5 tier. Now, this has long aggrieved us because our philosophy in this company is that simplicity is best. How do we create so much content? We keep it simple. We keep it streamlined. We commit to a process and we constantly fine-tune that process. Anything that wastes time, we get rid of. Having two patron tiers is not in line with our philosophy. So, we've decided to unify into a single tier at the price point of $7. Join the Pessimist Productions Patreon today because we are looking very forward to entertaining you all in 2022.
We've all heard that too much sodium is bad for us and that we eat too much salt. It's such a plentiful resource now that we can spare it to put it on our roads, soak in our tubs with it, and, like me, kill flies with salt guns with it. With how accessible salt is now, it's hard to imagine that salt used to be worth its weight in gold and something people died for in the past. Today, salt's history and its role in war and revolution gets deep fat fried. So you got to know the history of salt. If you're going to be the saltiest person on the podcast, you got to know about a little salt.
Yeah, you got to embrace the meme.
In my personal opinion, Paul, this episode is long overdue.
Yeah.
Long overdue.
The salt-episode.
Salt is a pretty interesting history to it as a resource valued by humans.
I mean, it's a resource valued by a number of animals. I mean, like,
of course,
elephants will travel insane distances to get to these caves.
Well,
have you seen those? Have you seen the mountain goats that like climb on the side of a mountain to lick the fucking salt deposits and shit? Like,
so salt is a super essential element of existence for many creatures.
Yeah, it was actually animals that led us to the salt in the early days of the exploitation of this resource, and it was animals that taught us, its value. So they knew before humans did. So since its discovery several thousand years ago, salt has profoundly affected human life. Not just with food consumption and preservation, but also in the human, economic, mythological, and religious spheres. Probably a whole lot of other ways I didn't think of. Salt, if you don't know, comes from dried up seas or from living seas. So all salt comes from either oceans that used to exist and dried up, or oceans that currently exist and can be harvested from it. So it can bubble to the surface as brine or crop out in form of salt licks and shallow caverns.
A salt lick.
Mm-hmm. Below the skin of the earth, it lies in white veins, some of them thousands of feet deep in the earth. It can be evaporated from salt pans, boiled down from brine, or mined, as it often is today, from shafts that extend a half a mile or more into the ground. So pretty crazy.
That's not cheating to the salt mines. That's where you belong, TJ.
Scott, I remember when you were a kid, you used to like dump salt on your hand and you just like lick your hand.
That was kind of like a fad when I was a kid. There was like Mexican salt stuff. It was like, I can't remember the name of it, but you would sprinkle it. Like the kids would put it on their hand and lick it all day. It's like spicy,
salt
but
got
real
so
salty.
pretentious in my lifetime too. It's like Himalayan sea salt, ground up, of course, kosher salt.
Yeah.
Coarse grain Himalayan.
For those that
pink
love salt, it's like a salt boom, dude.
Well,
We just
because
have
it's
so much
cheap
of
as
it.
fuck because we have tons and tons more of it than we need. And so they're trying to make it all premium again and get people to pay extra money for salt.
Brilliant idea.
So the history of the world, according to salt, is pretty simple, I guess, in general. Animals wore paths to salt licks. Men followed those salt lick paths. Trails that the men used to get back and forth to the salt lick to harvest this resource became roads. And settlements started to spring up beside these roads. When the human menu shifted from salt-rich game to cereals, more salt was needed to supplement the diet. But the underground deposits were beyond reach, obviously. There's really no way to dig a half mile into the ground back then. And the salt sprinkled over the surface was insufficient to meet the demand. So that meant what we had was, instead of what we have today, which is like, oh man, I got to go to the store and get salt. And it's like $5 for like 10 pounds of salt or something.
Yeah, it's cheap.
Pretty cheap resource now. It was actually like gold back in the day.
I mean, it was such a valuable resource that literally, like, the routes that civilizations traveled along and the locations where things were put were placed because of, like, access to salt. Very important.
Well, yeah, it's an essential life resource. Like I said, that's why those animals will go to such great lengths to get it. I mean, we were just doing the same thing. We have a little more organized in our manner of getting it.
Yeah.
And we got pretty fucking good at it to the point where, now it's like cheap.
But for a long time, it wasn't. For a long time in human history, it weren't cheap and it weren't easy to come by. So as civilization spread out, salt became one of the world's principal trading commodities. Some sources have confirmed the presence of salt trading back in prehistoric times. So obviously, like,
before we were writing shit down, we're trading salt.
Yep. So the Phoenician people proved to be masters in the extraction and trading of salt. In fact, I may trace my lineage back to ancient Phoenicia,
Yeah.
because I am also an expert in the extraction and trading and use of salt.
I don't feel like you trade salt. I feel like you generate it.
Oh, I trade it. I give it from me to other people. That's trading.
Yeah. What do you trade? What do you get for it, though?
I can't reveal that, TJ.
Because in trade, you gotta, like,
I get a little satisfaction when I see people get worked up, TJ.
Yeah, that's true.
I get a little endorphin
People get salty when you get salty, and then they don't see their own salt.
Well,
like, he's a salty fuck.
Yeah, people get salty. It's not even. Yeah, you're right. You're right. People get salt. Like, the salt infects them. You're right. So salt, of course, was of crucial importance economically. It was highly valued. Its production was legally restricted in ancient times. Historically used as a method of trade and currency. The expression "not worth his salt" stems from the practice of trading slaves for salt in ancient Greece. So,
how much is he worth? Not even worth his salt.
Yeah, he's not worth his salt. Get him out of here. It's like, oh shit.
Special salt rations given to early Roman soldiers were known as salarium argentium, which is basically golden salary. It's like, you're given salt as a fucking payment. It's like being given gold, but like they were meant to like use it to preserve their food and shit. So it wasn't really it's like gold. It's like if somebody gave you a stack of money and then like left you in the wilderness with a match, like, you know what I mean? To freeze to death and or burn the money.
Well, like, money has always been a stand-in for resources. And, if you have a resource that's valuable enough, you can use it as a currency, just like gold,
And, I mean,
silver,
it was definitely traded amongst
precious
soldiers,
metals,
I'm sure, as well.
I mean, back in these days, any resource could be traded for, I mean, you might have a hard time trading certain things, but, as long as there's some demand for it, if you got 15 goats, you can buy, I don't know what 15 goats gets you. Probably something pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know either. Not only did salt serve to flavor and preserve their food, Made a really good antiseptic, which is why the Roman word for these salubrious crystals is first cousin to Solus, the god of health. So there you go. Or the goddess of health, sorry.
Yeah, rub some salt in the wounds. Ah, yeah, it feels good.
The reason that hurts, by the way, is that it's, killing everything in the vicinity, including bacteria and shit, fungus that wants to set up.
Yeah,
in
salt
wound.
has a lot of interesting properties. Like one thing that I learned to do culinarily is like if I'm cooking any sort of zucchini, and it's like I never liked to cook zucchini before, but if you salt the zucchini, it draws all the moisture out, and then you wipe it down, you pat it down with like a paper towel, and then bam, it cooks up way better.
Well, it's like the whole thing with
because the
brining
salt
meat.
will draw that moisture right out of it.
Yeah, you brine certain meats, usually thicker meats, because thinner ones it just becomes way too salty.
Right. And the brines, they're proven to penetrate the meat way deeper than the fucking marinades do. Marinades barely coat the surface. So,
Scotty, where do all roads lead?
To Rome.
Of course, they lead to Rome. And one of all those roads that led to Rome, one of the busiest was the Via Salaria, which, as you can tell, the salt route, over which Roman soldiers marched and merchants drove ox carts full of the precious crystals up the Tiber from the salt pans at Ostia.
Who dis? Mr. Magoo's wife or something.
Yeah, it's Mr. Magoo's wife.
Or it's Mr. Magoo in drag.
Either way.
One of those two.
This is actually something that you saw me do one time, and it freaked you out because you'd never seen a person do it.
Right. I was like, whoa, people really do that in real life? That's weird.
Yeah. Into some superstitions, huh?
Yeah, she's throwing the salt over her shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah, so you and I were at a Waffle House, if I remember correctly.
I feel like we were at Waffle House, or maybe we were at Little John's. I can't remember which. But
one of the two. And the salt spilled. And I just kind of, without even thinking about it, because I was raised with this superstition, I grabbed a pinch of it and I threw it over my left shoulder. And TJ looked at me like I was a fucking alien. He was like, what did you just do? And I had to, and then I realized how fucking stupid it is. I had to tell him.
Yeah, I remember that.
So
that did freak me out a little bit.
Yeah, well, superstitions, man. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Dude, he's been brainwashed, man. He can't help it.
I don't remember if that was before or after I fucking made you think there was a ghost in the house, but whatever.
Maybe before, I don't know. Maybe that let you know that you could pull it off.
He's susceptible. Part of you believes in the Fresno Nightcrawlers. I know it. I know that's another topic for another time.
Part of me believes in a lot of shit that if we got into it, like my respect level in general would probably fall pretty precipitously.
I mean, I got a few things myself. I'm not I can't claim 100% skepticism, but whatever.
Nearly 4 pages of the Oxford English Dictionary are taken up by references to salt, more than any other food. So undeniably, the history of salt is both broad and unique, leaving its indelible mark in cultures. This is one of them, right? Yeah. Like we just spent the time talking about like a little thing I picked up in my childhood that was so alien to TJ that he didn't even, he'd heard of it, but he didn't think people did it.
I like seeing it in movies.
It's in a lot of cultures and traditions. I mean, worldwide. That's very rare to find something that ubiquitous, to be honest with you.
So it's precious, it's portable, and as a commodity, it's long been a cornerstone of economies throughout history. The effects of salt deficiency are highlighted in times of war, when human bodies and national economies are strained to their limits. In fact, researcher M.R. Block conjectured that civilization began along the edge of the desert because of the natural surface deposits of salt that were found. I'm not sure if that's true, but it's,
at least it makes sense. Because, you just think about all the applications of salt. I mean, obviously, it flavors your food. It can preserve your food, especially before refrigeration. If you got like a snowy place, you can fucking clear out some ice and snow with salt. I mean, your body literally needs it. You can break foods down with it. You can preserve foods with it. It like has all these different properties and all these different.
Well, we know a lot of civilizations too are started by water as well, though. I mean, coastal rivers, a lot of major rivers. If you look at major cities, they're usually on a body of water.
Yeah, but they're, a lot of times that's because they're getting fish, and the fish are basically brining themselves all the time in the ocean, which is salty.
Yeah.
So, those people are getting a lot of salt from those fish, right? So, I mean, like, a part of that is like, they want the protein of the fish, but like, it's also, they want the sodium.
Yeah, dude. Like I said, you get down to it, you're just an animal that needs that salt. You're like, oh God, I want it. I need it. I mean, now we get plenty, so we don't have to worry about it.
That same researcher Block also believes that the first war likely fought near the ancient city of Assault on the Jordan River could have been fought.
It was a full frontal assault.
Yeah. And I mean, that is the etymology of a lot of those war words and shit. So anyway, yeah, he thinks that it could have been fought largely over the fact that the city was built near really precious salt deposits, and
it's like some dune shit, dude. The salt must flow.
Yep.
I mean, but if it's that valuable, of course. I mean, any resource like that is going to be fought over.
Right. I mean, most wars are fought over resources, but more than anything else. So.
Thousands of Napoleon's troops died during the French retreat from Moscow due to inadequate wound healing and lower resistance to disease, both results of salt deficiency. So everybody that calls me salty, I'm just fighting off disease.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's really kind of a weird thing. I don't really understand why your temperament has started to become, I mean, like, if anything, it's more like peppery, right?
Yeah. Spicy.
Salt. Yeah, salt is like, it's like real, like, useful shit. And when people say you're salty, I feel like they're trying to make it an insult. You've embraced it, but like, it's like supposed to be like, oh, you're salty.
Yeah, they're just saying you're essential at that point.
Yeah, it's like,
I mean, it's essential to their lives.
He's an essential thing that's super important and has shaped the fucking forces of history. Take that. It's like, that's a stupid insult.
Dude, you know what I do when I get criticism like that? I take a pinch of it and I throw it over my left shoulder so the devil doesn't sneak up behind me. Now, gentlemen, let's talk about some of the roles that salt has played in some conflicts that you may or may not heard of and have heard of. And let's talk about one that you certainly have heard of here. Let's talk about the American Civil War, the great rending of our nation, brother against brother in the trenches.
Oh, shit, dude. Going there, huh?
The American Civil War was fought not over salt, but sodium had a significant role in military strategy back then, as you can imagine. I mean, right now, as you can imagine, as I am a Southern War general that's teleported through time to give you a little lecture on this here subject.
The war of Northern aggression, right?
That's right.
We've heard of it. We've heard it.
In the 1800s, most American salt production took place in the North. Millions of years ago, an inland sea near Syracuse, New York, gradually filled with sediment and left behind these massive salt deposits and brine springs. On the other hand, the South depended on imported salt, much of which was used as ballast when foreign ships came for Southern cotton. When the Civil War started, it was vital that the Confederacy find an alternative source of salt. There were Union blockades that led to steep shortages in the South of all foods, including salt. Salt was really their only chance of making the most of what they had by preserving everything they had.
Yeah, but of course you don't have that either.
You don't have access to it. What can you do?
Yeah, I mean, like, you got a very agricultural, like, economy, agrarian fucking way of life in the South, obviously. I mean, and the fucking, you don't have, I mean, like, you already saw how Napoleon's army was affected by it. So, like, yeah, I mean, like, a lot of times, especially in these early days, you don't have the salt. You can't win the fucking war because you can't have fucking salt deficient troops because the fucking effects are too drastic.
Yep.
And you can't preserve your food, so you're fucked on that front because refrigeration technology is still a fucking goddamn long way away.
According to some historians, desperate Southerners even reused their salt. They found some creative ways to do it. Like, they would brush it off of their salted meat before they'd use it. So they'd, like, once a meat was fully salted and preserved, when they came time to use it, they would brush as much salt off of it and reuse that salt. Or they could boil it, I guess, out of the floorboards of their smokehouses. So they would put this meat in the smokehouse when it was ready to cook, and then they'd go, like, all this grease that dripped down there is filled with salt. They knew it. And so they would just take the floorboards and boil it, reduce it down until all the salt was left at the bottom. Scrape that shit up.
Shit, dude.
I mean, that just shows.
I mean, yeah, I guess you gotta do what you gotta do.
I mean, you know, I don't know, man. It's just like one of those things, like, you take salt for fucking granted because, like, it seems so plentiful.
The average American eats too much salt. It's the opposite. It's like, I mean, there's more taken for granted. Like, we're inundated with it at this point.
It's true. The Commissary General of the Confederacy, Lucius B. Northrop, fretted over the lack, writing to another official in 1862 that, in consequence of the insufficient quality and inferior quantity of salt amongst the inhabitants, much of their meat is spoiling. Speculation of shipping difficulties compounded these problems. At the beginning of the war, a 200-pound sack of salt in New Orleans cost about 50 cents, which is still a lot of money back in that day. But it was $25 by 1862.
$25 in 18. Oh my God, it's gotta be what, like thousands of dollars now.
You talk about inflation, man. That's some.
I'll look it up.
I don't even.
Yeah, what is it? Yeah, what is that now? Because that's. I mean, I don't even know if they have inflation calculators that go that far back. But
I think they do.
Do they?
Yeah, I'll look into it.
Yeah, look into that shit because I really don't know.
So this only goes back to 1913. I think there might be ones that go further back. Here we go. This one goes from 1635. So
okay, cool.
So the start year would be what,
1862.
62.
And the amount is $25.
No, it's $25. Calculate. That's $684.63.
Well, okay. And so I was off, but oh man, so you got $700.
A 200-pound sack of salt is like $700, which it would have been 50 cents prior to that. So that's pretty crazy.
So you can imagine that with such a pinch on their natural salt reserves, it became a huge part of Union strategy to exploit that, and any natural salt deposits that the South did have became huge strategic military targets for the South. They basically embarked on an entire campaign of, and you can see that this is people distilling salt by panning it out.
Some voluntary Southern
yeah,
workers.
yeah, some voluntary Southern labor. Anyway, you can skip ahead a few, TJ.
Okay.
See where my little marker is on there.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
So this strategy to deny them salt culminated with this repeated attacks on the aptly named Saltville, Virginia.
Saltville.
It accounted for up to 2/3 of the salt used by the Confederacy. Saltville's inaccessibility and the strong Confederate presence in the area made its capture difficult for most of the Civil War. So they sieged it for a long time. I'm trying to skip ahead a little bit. I took a little too much information on this topic, I guess, because
close to your heart, man.
It is, dude. I'm too. Maybe this one should have been a longer episode. Maybe I'll make it a longer episode. But it took about 3 months to siege it. And there's a picture of this is General Stoneman and his staff here. They moved out of Knoxville in hopes of destroying vital.
Is that Jared Leto?
Yeah, I think it is.
That's Jared Leto, and that's Tucker Carlson right next to him. Look at him.
Damn, dude.
Deathless vampires. They're all in there.
Look at. That's definitely Tucker Carlson. That's definitely Jared Leto. I mean, that's 100% Jared Leto. I think this might just be Tucker Carlson's like great grandpa or something.
But that's Jared Leto, though, for sure.
But that is 100% Jared Leto. So just putting that out there.
500 reservists and local militia commanded by Colonel Robert Preston occupied hilltop forts overlooking the Southwest, but the federal soldiers easily flanked and outnumbered their defenders, took the salt works, and yeah, that was it.
I mean, one thing that strikes me about this picture too is that there was like, it was way less uncommon to see a dude with a fucking great looking beard back then.
True.
You know? Like,
Only a
I'd
few
say
people. Like there's way more than your average though.
Oh yeah. So like this dude has
long beard. Yeah.
This guy probably has the most epic beard. The fucking dude that's standing here.
He's got a nice one.
I mean, it's real nice. This guy has got like a really well kept beard. So does this guy over here. This guy's beard looks like it's coming in. This guy's is all right. Then you got some dudes with like some fucking alternative fucking facial hair, you know, like the mutton chop kind of thing.
Yeah.
Some mustaches.
Only two clean shaven. Actually, three.
Yeah. And, you know, some guys are just like, no, but you know what? It's cool that everybody could just fucking, you know, you're going to wear some facial hair or not. It's like you have a little fucking decision. Now it's like everyone's expected to do one thing or the other. Either society's like, beards are in. You know, or just like the other shit. Anyway,
Society ain't telling me
not related to any fucking thing.
Society can't tell me shit about my beard. My beard stays
I'm getting a little
no matter
salty
what.
about this beard thing. You know what I mean?
Let's talk about somebody that is associated with salt that you may not immediately associate with salt. What about Gandhi? Maybe one of the least. Wasn't he supposed to be like one of the least salty individuals that ever lived?
I mean, yeah.
Fought a war
He's supposed to be
peaceful
the
resistance.
anti-salt. Yeah. That doesn't sound very salty.
Yeah, he's supposed to be on the light side of the salt, but apparently not. Salt production and distribution in India had long been a lucrative monopoly of the British. Through a series of laws, the Indian populace was prohibited from producing or selling salt independently of the British Empire. And instead, Indians were required to buy expensive, heavily taxed salt that often was imported. You can imagine how silly it would seem to an Indian to know that your country is rich in salt deposits and to have to pay for imported salt from somewhere else.
That happens in a lot of parts of the world, like oil-rich parts like Iran imports refined oil.
I mean, we look in your episode, Sky. We saw you did a patrons episode. What was it called? It was like how everything's basically a pile of shit. And you didn't talk about the lithium.
I don't think that was the name of the episode, but sure. Oh, cobalt, you were talking about.
Oh, yeah, the cobalt.
Yeah, cobalt is mainly mined in what's called artisanal mines, which are basically mines that people just dig. And of course, you know, there's children as young as, you know, 10 or like 12, but every facet of the family is working in the industry. Like when you're young, you just sort the cobalt.
Right, but they don't get the, you know, if they want to have the actual benefit of that, this is going to be
no, they don't get it.
Them, you know?
It's they basically take it to a market. Chinese people buy it. And it's sent to China to be refined. Yeah.
So, also, India is a more temperate climate than a lot of other ones, which means people sweat a lot when they're laboring.
Oh, yeah.
Which means they need more salt than your average person to replace the salt that is excreted during sweating. So it was, you know, obviously a hot button issue amongst Indians that they had to pay these exorbitant import taxes on, you know, it would be like taxing like water. Wait.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, they have
we
plenty.
do that already. Never mind.
Well, the British basically just had a racket. It's like, look, you got to buy it. Like, you're going to export this to our country. We're going to refine it and sell it back to you at a higher price.
Right.
Like, it's ridiculous.
Now, to be honest with you, the woes inflicted by this salt tax, they paled in comparison to the massive famines throughout the British occupation of India. But it was pivotal as a rallying point and a uniting political focus of Gandhi's campaign to oust British rule. So after proclaiming the Declaration of Independence of India on January 26, 1930, Mahatma Gandhi came to an impasse in his political career, focused on freeing India from British rule. I think the next picture there is a picture of him there, TJ.
Sure. This is just like, you know, this is just a country saying like, hey, shouldn't we be getting the fucking wealth of our own fucking country rather than
definitely
some kind of foreign fucking invader?
Right.
Which is, you know, pretty
especially
much
something
once again, almost every fucking war of resources in the fucking history of the world. I mean, pretty much every war has been fought for some kind of resources.
And if you look at the more successful revolutions, it's because there's a lot of things you can argue over, like ideology wise, but like starvation and like lack of survival based resources, it's pretty much a common unifier. Like, oh, no one can survive. This doesn't work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. That's pretty much when people actually unite together. So it's like, hey, so like our choices are unite as one or die.
Yeah.
What do you guys want to do?
Pretty good motivator, right?
All of a sudden, the fucking Nazis and the fucking Antifas are like, all right, we get along now for a minute.
Yeah, so Gandhi apparently struggled with basing his campaign on salt. It was something that he said he was guided by an inner voice to do. Take that for what you will. But he used the British government's salt tax monopoly as a catalyst for a major Satir Yagara campaign, which is a nonviolent resistance, civil disobedience. Salt made an ingenious strategic protest point because every peasant and every aristocrat understood the necessity of having salt in your everyday life. It was like a unifying thing. So it ended up being a pretty brilliant rallying point, even though there were, like I said, a lot greater injustices like total food shortages. A lot of those were probably driven by lack of salt as a preservative, though.
But there was, I mean, like Gandhi, like most fucking great men in history, has to have something of a marketing mind too. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, because he has to be able to figure out how to sell his ideas to the people.
And I'm not sure if this is actually Gandhi or if this is Ben Kingsley. As Gandhi.
I'm pretty sure this is Ben Kingsley playing Gandhi, but
I'm pretty sure you're right.
But it doesn't really matter, I mean,
no,
like, is it offensive that Ben Kingsley played Gandhi, or is he actually
Ben
Indian?
Kingsley gets a pass because Ben Kingsley has played almost every race imaginable. He's clearly been given some kind of higher level pass. He's
maybe he's just like
enough that he can fit into these different kind of roles. And
I will say this: if maybe Ben Kingsley contains the DNA of like multiple races and shit, so he can play whatever race he needs to play.
You know who else has done this a bunch of times? The guy that played the virus in Hackers, the evil guy.
Yeah.
He was the Indian guy in fucking Short Circuit, dude.
I know, yeah, that's true.
They brown faced him and everything. Got away with it.
Yeah, that would probably not fly now. Ben Kingsley, that probably wouldn't completely fly, but it'd fly better. Yeah. I don't know. What is his fucking actual racial makeup?
I think he has Asian ancestry.
See, so that's the thing. He's got.
I don't know. I think that. I'm not 100%.
If Ben Kingsley, I think he just has an equal proportion of all different fucking ethnic groups within him, and he's what we're all aspiring to, like we all fucking mix into like one fucking kind of group of people. No more fucking racial divides. Become Ben Kingsley.
Right.
That's the rallying call.
And so in a move that should sound kind of, I guess, familiar to anybody who has followed, the American civil rights movement, Gandhi started a march called the Salt March.
Awesome.
And before he started, he said sent a letter to the British Viceroy of India in which he offered to halt the march in return for the concession of banning the salt tax. And then he went on the march, and a bunch of people joined him. He stopped in villages on the route along the route, and larger crowds built up, and he won them over. Eventually, probably with just the sheer size of the movement at some point. But hey, a few people had to follow him at some point, so he took a risk. But pretty soon, it was like a big political issue for the British Empire. Hundreds more would join the core group of followers as they made their way to the sea, until on April 5th, the entourage reached Gandhi after a journey of some 240 miles on foot. So that's a long ass fucking way to walk on foot. You okay there, TJ?
TJ, you okay? You okay, TJ?
On the morning of April 6th, Gandhi and his followers picked up handfuls of salt along the shore and thus started technically producing salt and breaking the law. And he implored these are his followers here doing the same. He implored them all to do the same. And
look at these horrible lawbreakers. What are they doing?
They need to go buy the heavily imported, heavily taxed salt.
Go buy your British tax salt, you pieces of shit. What are you thinking?
A war on the tax salt was to be continued up to the 13th of April. Salt was sold illegally over the seacoast of India. A pinch of salt from Gandhi himself sold for 1,600 rupees, which is like $750 at the time. So like people were just like, man, this dude, Gandhi touched this salt. Dude, it's the pinky of Christ, even back then.
I know.
Damn.
On May 5th, the British colonial authorities decided that they could no longer stand by while Gandhi flouted the law. They arrested him, severely beat many of the salt marchers. The beatings were televised around the world. Hundreds of unarmed protesters stood still with their arms at their sides while the British troops smashed them with batons. These powerful images stoked international sympathy and support for the Indian independence cause. Following the salt satyagraha, Gandhi spent nearly a year in prison. He was one of more than 80,000 Indians jailed in the aftermath of that protest. Literally millions turned out to make their own salt, inspired by that salt march. People across India boycotted all kinds of British goods, including paper and textiles. They just outright refused to pay their land taxes. It basically just started what you would say is a complete and utter revolt against the ruling class. They were just like,
right.
fuck
And
you,
it's
we
basically
ain't
like,
paying
just
you.
like, we are now ungovernable. You can, we will no longer, we're not paying the taxes. We're not doing any of this shit.
We ain't buying any of the shit you bring into the fucking country to supplement us. We ain't paying you for none of it. We ain't paying you no taxes. You can't evict us all.
It's so funny too, because like literally they marched. I mean, like if the British had any sort of sense of like, hey, let's listen to these guys. Like, listen to this. Hey, we'll call off the march. You just give us some salt or whatever. Let us fucking farm our own salt. I mean, they could like.
I mean, a lot of times
it's just crazy, dude. It's crazy how like fucking just like authoritarian people can be. Just when it's like all these people wanted was some very basic, simple things.
I think that America learned I think America learned from this kind of shit, though. I feel like in this country, like once it even became like a thing, like, oh shit, this salt shit's threatening us. All right, we're gonna change that and we'll fuck them some other way. Build a new fuck them into the system somewhere else.
Well, I mean,
you won, guys. You did it. You fucking you defeated the salt tax.
No, I don't think
grass tax is in effect now.
I don't think anybody could deny that like modern American protests have taken pretty much like every bit of this and used it to their advantage.
I mean, MLK for sure. And then
I mean, I think it's undeniable.
That's obviously part of the fucking DNA of like how to do a protest in this country. So.
And so eventually, as you can imagine, the kind of like not just the initial salt walk, but the ripple effect of this giant revolution that built behind it earned India its independence in 1947. So there you go. Salt, a pretty powerful fucking driver of history. I definitely found out over the course of this that we could probably do a longer episode on salt, but we'll see. Maybe we'll do a series of mini-sodes on salt, but there's two ways.
Oh my God.
Salt.
Yeah. I mean, because like we didn't get it. This is just like the way salt affected these conflicts. I'm sure there's other ones it's affected too. But like we didn't even get into like all the fucking physiological shit salt does, and
yeah, we didn't get like
chemical.
I like to learn more about the pretentious salts. So there's actually any difference, or I'm just paying for like some food coloring or something. I mean, there's a lot of shit about salt, dude. There's a lot of shit.
Scotty, if you don't fucking eat Albanian red salt, Scotty,
what'll happen to me?
I don't know. You're just not cool.
You just ain't shit. If you don't
my
have
God, please let me
Albanian
get
red.
it.
You ain't shit if you don't fucking got no Albanian red up in your pantry.
When this episode ends, I'm going to get some Albanian red salt.
Himalayan pink is fucking yesterday. Albanian red is where it's at now.
Yeah, what is this? 2019? Himalayan.
Sorry, guys. I'm gonna go.
Himalayan.
I'll
pink
throw it
salt.
out. I'll throw it out and buy some new salt right away.
That's like fucking white trash salt. All right.
Feel ashamed.